Are you an overthinker? Do you tend to overthink every decision or action or situation in your life? Do you have a hard time knowing whether you should wait or take action on something? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Boldly Driven Conversations with Bree. So let's go. Okay, so I have been in a weird place and questioning a lot of things going on in my life. I've talked about how I am in a liminal space and transitions in my life. And I find myself oftentimes overthinking all of my decisions. Little decisions, big decisions. And usually it's like after the fact when I can't change my decision. And then that makes me, with the next decision, start to overthink that next decision. And this is true especially when it comes to when it involves other people and how it's going to affect them, about patterns in my life. I'm in this huge growth spurt yet again, where I am really noticing patterns in my life, and I'm really noticing patterns in my actions and my responses and reactions to stressful situations and to having to make decisions. And so I want to kind of go through what I'm doing, the questions I'm asking myself to ground myself, give myself a reality check, and give myself a different perspective, as well as discussing pros and cons, or how to know like if you should wait or you should take action. How my own decision-making process. Because I do feel like I have made the best decisions for myself based on the information I've had, doing these practices. And with a caveat of I'm human and I also still mess up. But these are things that have really been helping me because I am an absolute chronic overthinker. I totally get in my head, and then sometimes that makes me want to have inaction. So hopefully maybe this will help you if you are finding yourself being in inaction and to know if you should still wait or go. Okay, so first, I want to talk about the value of waiting and the value of taking action, because there is value for both of these things. And it just depends on the circumstance. And there's some things that we can kind of ask ourselves a little bit to know which one we should do. So the value of waiting. The value of waiting for sure is being able to gather information, especially when we're talking about complex situations. Oftentimes we need more information in order to make a complex decision that is going to affect other people, our lives, and if it's going to make like a big impact on life in general and moving forward. Especially when we're talking about our goals, when we are making decisions and we're thinking about situations that are going on in our life, making sure we have all the information and not making an assumption is very wise and a very bold thing. So waiting can be bold because oftentimes people want us to rush and make a decision on something. And sometimes the boldest thing we can do, the most authentic thing we can do, is to be very intentional by gathering information. When we gather all this information and we take time and we wait, this allows us to make a better decision. It allows us to reduce our impulsivity. So we're not just making impulsive decisions, unwise decisions. We are not taking actions that are going to, in the long run, be a detriment for us. Most of the time, I will say. Obviously, in waiting, sometimes we miss opportunities, but sometimes waiting and just listening and being patient really does allow us to reduce that impulsivity if that's something that you find yourself having an issue with. When we wait, this will allow us to conserve or preserve our energy. So each of us gets 24 hours in a day. Each of us gets so much energy every day to accomplish tasks, goals, etc. And so when we are good with our time management, we can prioritize the things that absolutely are necessary to get done, and prioritize self-care so that we can do all the things, especially on super busy days or days where we have to make a lot more decisions, days that are going to be big and very energy consuming, whether emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever it is, energy wise, we are going to have to use that energy. So sometimes waiting really allows us to conserve the energy for when we actually have to do the thing. An example, if we wait in making a decision to pay for something, I actually had this situation the other day where there was this great opportunity, something I really wanted to do for a cohort. And I had the phone call in the morning, and then I had a meeting later on for a spot for my RV. And I really, really wanted to do the cohort. I really wanted to say, yes, take my money. I want to be a part of this. It's going to be great for my business. It's going to be awesome. But something told me to wait. Something told me to just wait, ask for an extension to make a decision, and don't make a decision right away. And I did. And I'm really glad that I did, because there was this spot that came open that I really wanted for my RV, and it's a long-term spot. And I ended up having the meeting, and they were like, yes, absolutely, you can have the spot after some negotiations and things and figuring some things out. But I had to pay for it right then. And I did not have the extra cash flow. Had I paid and committed to doing this cohort, I wouldn't have had the money to get the spot and secure it right then and there. And I may have lost the spot. And my priority is getting a spot for my RV for multiple reasons. So sometimes I had to preserve that financial energy. I had to preserve the finances in general. I had to preserve the decision making so that I can make a wiser decision with the resources that I had, if that makes sense. And I think also the last point of the value of waiting is that it allows serendipity in our life. It allows things to happen that we just don't know. Again, going back with the RV and the spot, I had an opportunity several weeks ago where a spot came open at a different place, and it was a little bit cheaper, but it was farther away and it was way more inconvenient, and for the reasons that I needed to have a close campsite. And I turned it down, and I was really like, I kept overthinking, like, did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? I kept the number. I was like, I could always call back. And then I'm glad I waited, because serendipitously, this other spot came open at the preferred place I wanted to be. It was literally the original intent and goal of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And so serendipity happened in my waiting. And so I was really glad that I did that. And I listened to my intuition about that, of not making the decision. Okay. And then there's value to action though too. Value of action is that action creates momentum. So when we just decide to go do the thing, this creates a momentum where, like, sometimes the hardest thing to do is start. I remember I used to run half marathons, and I used to do a lot of training. And so often for me, when I was in that training, it was just hard for me to get up and put my running shoes on and go. But once I did the action, I got up, I put the running shoes on, and I got outside and started, the momentum carried me, and I did great. There were some really crappy runs, because that happens. If you've ever ran before, you understand. But for the most part, it really helped me in my training, and it helped me just go do the thing. I use this technique when I really need to take an action and I'm just like scared or in that freeze mode, or just don't want to take the action for not good reasons. I use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, which I just count down from 5 and I literally just get up and go do the thing, whether it's getting out of bed or completing a task, whatever it is. And I use this on very simple things. Not, big complex situations where big decisions need to be made, but like, I need to get out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'm getting up and going. And this creates momentum for your life. And it will allow you to get to the next thing. And you'll find that it's not so hard to do the actual thing as much as it is to start in doing the actual thing. And when we take action, it allows us to seize the opportunity. Like, we don't miss out on opportunities. Sometimes it requires risk from us, and we get more opportunities than also, if we make a mistake, to learn. So, it's a learning experience when we take action sometimes, whether from mistakes or just, maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe it's just learning and learning that it's okay to jump in, learning that it's okay to just take the action if we're someone who finds ourselves always waiting. Okay, so value of both. There are values to both of those things. So how do we decide? Like, how do we decide if we're going to wait or if we're going to act? I think we have to consider the situation. Is the situation a very complex situation, or is the situation and the thing that we're questioning a very simple thing? If it's very simple, oftentimes that's where I will risk and just take the action. And I don't necessarily gather all the info. It's a little more impulsive, and it has its own serendipitous moments. If it's a very simple thing. I think we also sometimes, when we are, well, not sometimes, but when we are in a decision-making mode and like we find ourselves overthinking, we're like, I got to make a decision about this, whether I'm waiting or going, is we have to assess our own readiness. Are we truly ready? Especially when we're talking about big, complex things that are going to affect others, that affect ourselves, affect our future. Do we have all the information necessary? Do we have all the resources necessary? Do we have the energy necessary for doing the thing? I remember I wanted to reorganize like a closet, or like reorganize a bedroom. I think it was really what it was. And it was crazy messy, and it was very disorganized. And I remember starting it at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just wanted to get it done because I was like, I won't be able to do it again. And I started at 4 o'clock. And I'm one of those people, like, when I start a project, I really, really need to finish it. Otherwise, like, it messes with my whole psyche. And I was up until 2 a.m. and then I had to get up and go to work the next day. Like, it was awful. It was a terrible decision. I was not ready. I did not have the energetic resources. I did not have everything I needed to organize. Like, I was making a run out to Walmart, at midnight to get organization bins and whatnot. I wasn't ready. I didn't prepare for myself. And then the consequences of that was really feeling terrible at work like the next couple of days. So I think feeling those consequences oftentimes in our choices really teaches us a lot, especially when we're talking about decision making and overthinking and risking and having to decide whether we're going to wait or act. And now in the future, I know, don't start the project at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At least wait, until the next morning. It can wait. It absolutely can wait. So it was a learning experience for me. And then I think we also decide whether we act or wait by listening to our intuition. The more we practice listening to our intuition and trusting ourselves, trusting our own moral compasses, trusting our decision-making skills, trusting whether or not this is best for us or not, the more we learn to listen to our intuition, and our intuition becomes more refined. So make the risks on the small things, on the simple things with your intuition. And this will help build you to be able to decide later on whether you should wait or act in the future. It really will help you to be able to listen to your intuition when those really important matters come up and those complex matters come up. And I think the last thing in how to decide or wait is to be patient with ourselves. This is hard for me. Especially when I'm talking to other people and they're making decisions, sometimes I lose my patience and I have to choose to not be judgmental or choose to not criticize or choose to not say, hey, I think you're making the wrong decision, and really allow them to be patient and also allow myself to be patient with myself in doing that and in making my own decisions. Am I really listening to my intuition? I have to be patient. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I really didn't listen to my intuition, and now I'm kind of regretting that decision. And sometimes we have to be able to distinguish between, is this my intuition or is this fear? Is this a pattern of fear that is happening in my life? And I'm making decisions from this pattern that I'm seeing, from this fear that I'm feeling. Okay, so some questions that I've been asking myself as I'm kind of in this situation where I'm like making some decisions on some things, and I just am like, am I making the right decision? Should I wait? Should I go? Should I act? What decisions, what's the answer? And so, three areas of questions that really help me is 1, to ground myself, 2, to have a reality check, and 3, be able to see things from a different perspective, because we only have one perspective of ourselves and our situation based on the information we have. So how can I shift my perspective so I can have more information so I know how to make my decision, rather than overthinking and criticizing myself and allowing that rude brain to make the decision for me out of fear or out of something else like patterns and whatnot. Okay, so the first grounding type question that I'll ask myself is, what am I feeling physically in my body? So getting to know the sensations in your body. So for me, in the situation I find myself is I am noticing like some fluttering in my chest and some tension in my shoulders. And so these sensations tell me that I'm feeling kind of stressed. The tension in the shoulders show me that I'm feeling like anxiety, stress, and the fluttering in the chest shows me that I have some fear about some of the decisions that I need to make. And so just by understanding like those sensations in my body, I'm better able to know how I'm actually feeling about the situation. And this helps me make a better decision. And it also is allowing me to kind of stop overthinking, and it just grounds me. It makes me like get back in my body rather than up here in my head, like trying to make all these decisions and like, oh my gosh, what about this? And what about that? And I didn't think about this. And it just grounds me. It gets me back into a place where I am feeling more secure and confident in myself and my decisions and trusting my intuition. And something else that's very grounding, especially when we kind of get all up in our heads and get like a little stressed and we might be going into like panic mode, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. So this is a different 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique where I ask myself, what are 5 things I can touch? And then I actually go and I touch those things. What are 5 things I can hear? And then I stop and I actively like listen to those things that I'm physically hearing. Like right now I can hear cars going by. So like stopping and grounding myself to hear the cars going by. So it brings me back into the physical presence of now. 2 things I can smell. What can I smell? I can smell my drink. I can smell the plastic thing I had back there that is emanating some kind of chemically plastic smell. That's not good. And then 1 thing I can taste. I just took a sip of my drink. So I can taste that. And I can also taste my toothpaste that I brushed my teeth with. And it's not a good combination. But it's grounding me, putting me back in my body. And it's just putting me in the present moment of right now, rather than all the what ifs and the future choices and, oh my gosh, am I making the right decision? Am I making the wrong decision? It just brings us back into ourself, into the present moment. So then reality check wise, like what is the reality of the situation? And some of the questions that I ask myself is, the thoughts that I'm having right now about the situation or person or whatever it is, are they helpful or are they harmful? And here's the crazy thing is sometimes they're both. Like sometimes they're helpful to assess the situation, but they're really harmful to like the relationship, or they're harmful to the psyche, or they're harmful to, the way we feel about ourselves. And so it's really good to ask those questions, like all of these thoughts that I'm having, are they helpful or are they harmful? And that kind of helps me divide out to know what I should be listening to and what I shouldn't necessarily be listening to. Because if it's harmful, then it's not right. It's not the right voice to be listening to. And then I ask myself the question, is all the things I'm thinking, is it based on fact? Of yes, this is what's actually happening, or is it based on fear of this is what could happen, or this is what happened in the past, and this is like the pattern I'm seeing, and I'm following the same pattern, and I don't want to say follow the same pattern, and I want to do better, and see how it can easily cycle out. And it's like, wait, am I actually following the same pattern? Is that factual, or is that just the perspective that I have? Is that the reality of the situation? And sometimes patterns that we follow aren't necessarily bad. Not all patterns are bad. And so that's where we can ask ourselves, is this based on fact or is this based on fear? Am I making this decision out of fear? And I think another question I ask myself is, what would I tell a friend if they were in the same situation? What would I tell my friend, my best friend Trina, if she came to me and she was saying, hey, I have this situation in a relationship, or I have this situation, a life situation, and I'm just overthinking and I'm thinking about this. What would I say to her? Would I be as rude to her as I am sometimes myself and as critical as I am to myself? What would I tell her? Would I tell her the same things I'm telling myself? Would I tell her to do the same things that I'm doing in this situation? Am I overthinking it? Am I being kind to myself? Am I feeling the feelings that I'm feeling along with this? So we have to ask ourselves these questions of, how would I handle this with my friend whom I dearly care about? How would I deal with it? How would I assess the situation? How would I handle it? And then make sure that we're doing the same kind thing for ourselves. Compassionate way we would be with them, be compassionate with ourselves. And then the last question that helps me with my reality check is, what is my next step? Okay, I've done all the things. This is the reality of the situation. What is my next step? And this helps me get that forward action if I need to take the forward action. And sometimes the forward action is to wait. Sometimes the forward action is to step back and observe, listen more. And that can be really frustrating sometimes, especially for like future thinker people and people who are like very goal oriented, people like me. Sometimes it's really hard to wait. And that's where the struggle is because you always want to take the action. And that's why it's good to ask these questions to know if you should wait or if you should take action. And then perspective. So like perspective, how do we shift our perspectives? Because we have one perspective, right? And like we need to shift or expand and have multiple perspectives, because if we just see things from one perspective, oftentimes we are going to make the wrong decision. And so this takes into consideration, especially when we're dealing with other people and how is this going to affect others, because some of the decisions we make, absolutely, decisions I'm making are going to affect other people. And so I need to make sure that I am, making sure that I see things from different perspectives. And the first question I always ask myself is, how am I going to feel about this tomorrow? How am I going to feel about my decision tomorrow? Am I going to feel good about it? Am I going to feel confident about it? Or am I going to regret it? Whatever that decision is. Sometimes not making a decision. Am I going to regret it tomorrow? The immediate, not 5 years from now, but tomorrow, am I going to regret it? Oftentimes, if I'm not going to regret the decision I'm going to make tomorrow, like by waiting, then that's when I wait. Because it doesn't feel immediate. It's not like an immediate action I need to take. I can actually wait. And sometimes it also will press me into action because, I will regret if I don't take this action tomorrow or today, because tomorrow I'll regret it. I'll be like, why didn't I do that thing? So it's a good, helpful question for me. And I've asked myself it a lot. And for me, because my personality is go, 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 let's do the thing, action, 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 it really helps me wait and assess and be patient. Whereas for someone else who is in that waiting period and they're not taking action, this might help them to move forward. And the next question I ask myself is will it matter 1 year from now? So we do get to the future thinking. Is the decision I'm making right now going to matter a year from now? So, then you take that into consideration. And is it a big deal in the grand scheme of things? Is this a big deal? The decision I'm making right now, is it really going to affect, am I making like this way bigger than what it is? Does it really matter if I wear the jean jacket today or no? Is it really matter if I wear the lipstick or not? Does it really matter if I decide to call off work today, and take that extra rest day? I don't know. It's you got to decide for yourself, because the consequences for the action. Remember, consequences can be good and consequences can be bad. They're just like the reaction for every action that we take. Okay. And then what is a positive reframe? Oftentimes we get stuck in negative mode, especially when we are looking at things from only one perspective and it's a negative perspective. I always try to ask myself, how can I reframe this to be more positive? And it's really hard to do if you're not used to doing it. So this is where like talking to someone and like conversing with someone and asking them, help me reframe this to be more positive, can be a very helpful tool, and also gets you a different perspective because you're getting someone else's perspective on it. So make sure you're asking someone who's safe. Yeah. And I think overall, all these questions, what it helps us do is it shifts us from worry into being able to take action. Because sometimes what happens is when we are overthinking, we get stuck in worry and angst, and then we get in freeze mode. And then or flight mode, where we don't want to do anything and we just like hide. And so this helps us to get into a place where we can take action instead of just freezing and not doing anything, because even inaction is taking an action. But first we have to get over the worry and the angst. Okay. So your challenge today is to kind of really assess everything that I've said here are you seeing the value in waiting, or do you need to see the value in action? And are you making the decisions in a good, healthy way to wait or to take action? And can you ask yourself some of these questions, maybe to help you to move forward in making action more consistent in your life if you find yourself in a season of inaction? Or do you need to ask yourself these questions because you're just making all these impulsive decisions and maybe you need to wait? Maybe you need to pull back. Maybe you need to ask yourself, do I need to take a different perspective and a different approach to the situation, relationship, whatever it is, to kind of change the situation, to make better decisions? Okay, guys, have a great Monday or Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Have a great Tuesday.